My sister demanded I pay for her vacation after missing her birthday. I never thought that missing one birthday could lead to such a huge fallout, especially with my sister. But here we are, and she's demanding that I pay for her vacation as some sort of compensation for my thoughtlessness. I didn't think it would get this far, but now I'm stuck in the middle of a ridiculous situation that's putting a serious strain on our relationship. Let me take you through how it all went down, the drama, the arguments, and where we are now. It all started a few months ago when my sister Emily turned 30. I'll be honest, her birthday totally slipped my mind. I had been swamped with work, planning some personal projects, and just trying to keep my life together. I know it's not a great excuse, but it's the truth. I wasn't actively trying to ignore her or disrespect her. Life just got in the way. When the day came, I didn't send a card, didn't call, and didn't text. I genuinely forgot, and by the time I realized, it was already late in the evening, and I felt too ashamed to reach out. I texted her the next day, apologizing for missing the day, and offering to take her out to dinner to make up for it. I thought it was a simple mistake, a small blip in our usually close relationship. I figured she'd be disappointed, sure, but she'd understand. I had no idea what would come next. I honestly believed a simple apology and making plans to celebrate would be enough. But Emily was not having it. She sent me a cold, curt reply. "I can't believe you forgot. This isn't just any birthday, it's a milestone. You really don't care about me, do you?" At that moment, I was taken aback. Of course I cared. I didn't mean to forget. Things just got away from me. But instead of the usual understanding I was used to from her, this was a full-on accusation. My stomach dropped, but I didn't expect it to escalate as much as it did. The days after the birthday incident were incredibly awkward. Emily barely responded to my texts, and when she did, it was always short and passive-aggressive. I tried to give her space, but I was genuinely sorry and wanted to make things right. I planned to call her, maybe meet up, and explain myself in person, show her I wasn't being careless on purpose. But before I could make any moves, she dropped a bombshell on me. It was a Tuesday when I got the message. I was sitting at my desk, working, when my phone buzzed. It was from Emily. "Since you clearly don't care about me, maybe you'll care about this. I've booked a trip to Europe with some friends, but I'm not paying for it. I expect you to cover it. Consider it my birthday gift for the year." I stared at the message, rereading it multiple times. Was she joking? This couldn't be real. I wasn't the kind of person to just throw money at something like that, especially not for a vacation. Sure, I had apologized, but this felt like an extreme overreaction. My hands trembled as I typed a response. "What do you mean, pay for it? I'm sorry I missed your birthday, but this isn't how you handle things. A trip is a big deal. This isn't a birthday gift, Emily." She replied almost immediately. "It's the least you can do. If you cared about me, you'd make it right. I've had a rough year, and I'm not asking for much. Just help me out with this trip and consider it a birthday gift for the next few years. It's only fair." I couldn't believe what I was reading. My sister, who had always been close to me, was now telling me that I needed to pay for her vacation because I missed a single day. The whole situation felt so off. She was asking for something that I simply couldn't wrap my head around, something that felt more like manipulation than a reasonable request. I knew we had our disagreements in the past, but this was something entirely different. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe Emily was just angry in the moment? I figured maybe once the dust settled, she'd see reason and realize how unreasonable her request was. But the days went on, and the situation only got worse. Emily's response to my refusal was not what I had hoped. It wasn't a simple, "Okay, maybe we can talk about this later," or "Sorry, I was upset." Instead, it was a barrage of messages accusing me of being selfish and not caring about her. She even went as far as to say, "If you really love me, you'd do this. You know how much I've been through lately, but you're too busy with your own life." I tried to explain that I wasn't dismissing her feelings, but this was a huge ask. I didn't have the money to throw around for someone else's vacation, especially not after everything that had happened in the past year. I was going through my own financial issues, working hard just to stay afloat, and I didn't have the funds for a trip that wasn't even something I was invited to or part of. But Emily didn't want to hear any of it. She wouldn't let me off the hook. "You don't get it, do you? I can't believe I even have to ask this, but you should want to help me. You should want to make things right," she said in one particularly heated message. It stung, not just because of the pressure, But because I felt like my sister was starting to look at me as an obligation, a financial resource, rather than a family member who loved and cared for her. I had always been there for Emily. I helped her through breakups, job losses, and the many ups and downs of her life. Yet here she was, asking me for a massive favor because of a mistake that I deeply regretted. I was getting frustrated, and honestly, I started to feel like I was being emotionally blackmailed. The worst part was that I could see where this was going. If I gave in, what would she ask for next? Would I be expected to pay for every one of her trips, every celebration she felt wronged about? But I had to be strong. I couldn't let her make me feel guilty for something that was in the end just an honest mistake. The argument escalated when I found out Emily had taken the situation to our parents. She didn't just stop at sending me messages. No, she had gone behind my back and told them about the conversation we'd had. I should have expected it, but I felt blindsided. One evening, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was softer than usual, but I could tell something was off. "Sweetheart," she started, "I've heard from Emily. She's really hurt that you aren't helping her with the vacation. I think you should reconsider. It would mean so much to her, and honestly, it would make things right between you." I was speechless. My heart was racing as I tried to understand what was happening. I had spent so much time trying to do the right thing, trying to show Emily that I cared, and now my own parents were pressuring me to cave in. It felt like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. "Mom, I love Emily, but this isn't right. She's asking for a huge amount of money. I made a mistake, and I apologized for it. I'm not going to pay for her vacation just because she's upset," I said, my voice tight with frustration. Mom didn't respond immediately. There was silence on the other end before she sighed deeply. "I know it's a lot to ask, but she's been so emotional about it. You have to understand that she's hurt, and this could really help heal the rift between you two. I know you can afford it." I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my emotions in check. "I don't think you understand. It's not just about the money, it's about the principle of it. She's trying to manipulate me into paying for something that's her decision to make. I can't let her treat me like that." There was another pause before Mom spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "I just think you should think about it. You know how important family is." I knew what she was implying. It was as though she was saying I wasn't being a good sister or daughter by refusing, but I couldn't keep giving in to that kind of guilt. I had my own life to live, my own boundaries. And if I didn't stand up for myself now, I knew it would only get worse. "I'm sorry, but I can't. I can't let her walk all over me, and I won't let this become a pattern." The conversation ended awkwardly, and my mom didn't seem convinced, but I knew I had made my stance clear. Still, the weight of it all lingered, and the tension between Emily and me only grew from there. The fallout from the conversation with my parents hit me harder than I expected. Not only was Emily furious, but now my parents were disappointed in me, and it seemed like everyone was picking sides. It felt like I was stuck in a never-ending battle, and no matter what I did, I couldn't win. For a while, I tried to reach out to Emily again. I sent her a few texts trying to keep things calm, telling her that I loved her and that I was sorry about missing her birthday, but I still couldn't justify paying for her vacation. But every time I reached out, she would ignore me or send cold, hurtful replies. It was like she had shut me out completely. I thought maybe I could salvage our relationship by talking face to face. I invited her over for coffee one afternoon, hoping we could work things out. But when she walked through the door, the look on her face told me everything. She wasn't ready to forgive me. "I still can't believe you won't help me," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "You can't just apologize and make it go away. This was important, and you've ruined it." "Emily, I'm not trying to ruin anything," I replied, trying to stay calm. "I'm sorry about the birthday, but I'm not going to give in to this. It's not about the money. It's about the respect I deserve." Her eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms. "I thought you loved me. I thought you would do anything to make it right, but I guess I was wrong. You really don't care about me." The accusation stung more than I cared to admit. I had always been there for Emily. And now it felt like she was using my refusal as a way to attack me. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "I do love you, but love isn't about giving in to every demand. I've tried to make it right, but this isn't about me not caring. This is about you thinking you can manipulate me into doing what you want." She paused for a moment, then shook her head in disbelief. "I can't even talk to you right now," she muttered before storming out of the apartment. I stood there, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. It was like she couldn't see the bigger picture, that I was trying to protect our relationship and set boundaries, not push her away, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Emily's actions were a wake-up call. She had always been the type to push limits, but this was the first time she was asking me to cross a line. I just couldn't. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between Emily and me only grew. Every time I thought about reaching out, I hesitated. The silence was deafening, and I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe this wasn't just about the birthday or the vacation anymore. It was about something deeper. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that our entire relationship had been built on unspoken expectations and a lack of clear boundaries. During this time, I began to reflect on my own role in the situation. Had I been too accommodating in the past? Had I let Emily take advantage of my willingness to give in, to avoid confrontation? I had always prided myself on being the peacemaker in our family, but at what cost? One afternoon, I sat down with a cup of tea in my journal, trying to sort out my thoughts. I wrote about all the times I had bent over backward to make Emily happy, even when it meant compromising my own happiness. I realized that this situation was just the tip of the iceberg. The birthday and the vacation demand were just the latest in a long list of instances where Emily had asked for more than I could give, and I had always said yes. But I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep sacrificing my own peace just to avoid upsetting someone else, especially when that person was an adult who should have been able to manage their own emotions. I had to learn how to say no. I began to see things more clearly. Yes, I had made a mistake by missing her birthday, and yes, I had apologized for it. But I wasn't responsible for fixing everything with a grand gesture, especially when I had already tried to make amends. Emily's constant demands were wearing me down, and I needed to draw the line. It wasn't easy, but I realized that if I didn't set boundaries now, I'd be stuck in this cycle forever. I couldn't let her guilt trip me into making decisions I wasn't comfortable with, just to avoid conflict. Jake had seen what was happening too, and he gave me a piece of advice that stuck with me. You can't keep sacrificing yourself for others, especially when they don't appreciate it. His words rang in my ears as I made the decision to call Emily again. It wasn't about trying to fix everything. It was about setting the record straight. I had put off calling Emily for weeks, unsure of how the conversation would go or if it would even help. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that we needed to talk one last time. Whether we'd get back on the same page or part ways for good, I had to set things straight. I called her one evening after dinner, my heart racing as the phone rang. I was nervous, but I knew it had to happen. When she picked up, her voice was cold. "What do you want?" "Emily, I think we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, and I just want to clear the air. We've been through too much for this to end like this." She sighed, clearly frustrated. "What is there to talk about? You don't care about me. You don't care about my feelings, and now you won't even help me with my vacation. What's the point?" I could hear the hurt in her voice, but this time, I wasn't going to let her manipulate me. "It's not about not caring, Emily. I'm sorry about missing your birthday, and I've apologized for that. But asking me to pay for your vacation is where I draw the line. I love you, but I can't keep letting you guilt me into doing things I'm not comfortable with." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost feel her processing what I had said, weighing her next words carefully. "I just don't get it," she said finally, her voice softer now. "I thought if you loved me, you'd do anything to make it up to me. But I guess I was wrong. I don't know how we can move forward after this." I felt a pang of guilt in my chest, but I knew I couldn't back down. "I love you, Emily, but love isn't about doing whatever you want just to make things right. It's about respecting each other. I've tried, and I've apologized, but this situation has been draining me. I can't keep giving in to things that don't feel right." She was quiet for a long time, and I wondered if she was even processing what I was saying, or if she was just too upset to hear me. When she finally spoke again, her voice had lost some of its edge. "Maybe I've been too hard on you. Maybe I've been selfish," she admitted quietly. I don't know how to deal with all of this. I thought paying for the trip would fix everything, but now it just feels like I've lost you." I was surprised by the vulnerability in her voice. It wasn't something I'd heard in a long time. It was like a crack in the wall she had built between us. "Emily, I'm not going anywhere, but we both need to change how we deal with things. I can't keep being the person you turn to when things don't go your way. We need to find a healthier balance in our relationship. The silence on the other end of the line felt heavy, but this time it was different. It wasn't full of anger or resentment. It was the kind of silence that comes before understanding. Finally, she spoke again. "Okay," she said, her voice soft. "I'll try, but you have to know that I've been hurt. I need time to figure this out." I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I just want us to be okay." The call ended on a note of uncertainty, but it wasn't the same kind of uncertainty that had plagued our relationship for weeks. There was room for growth, for healing. It wasn't perfect, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but it felt like the first step toward rebuilding what we once had. The days following our conversation were filled with a mix of relief and tension. Emily had agreed to try to rebuild our relationship, but I knew it wouldn't be immediate. There would be bumps along the way, resentment to work through, and possibly more uncomfortable conversations. But I also felt a new sense of hope that we were finally on the right track. Jake and I spent more time together, talking about the future and what we both needed from each other. I realized how much I'd taken for granted in my relationship with Emily, how much I'd allowed myself to be manipulated in the name of family. I loved her, but I couldn't let myself be her emotional punching bag any longer. At the same time, I wanted to be patient with her. I knew that she was hurt, and that her actions came from a place of frustration. It wasn't just about the vacation. It was about the deeper insecurities and expectations she had. She wanted validation. She wanted to feel valued, and she wanted me to show that I cared. But I also needed to show her that my love wasn't unconditional, in the sense that I'd do anything without considering my own boundaries. A few days after the call, Emily reached out to me, tentatively. It wasn't a long message, but it felt like a breakthrough. "Can we meet up? I want to talk more about everything." When we met in person, I could see that she was trying. The sharp edges of her frustration had softened, and her eyes weren't filled with anger anymore. She was nervous, but there was an openness in her posture that hadn't been there before. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," she started, her voice quieter than usual. "I didn't realize how much I was pushing you. I just didn't know how to deal with feeling left out or forgotten. But I see now that it's not fair to put that on you." I felt a lump in my throat. This was the Emily I remembered, the one who could admit when she was wrong, who could be vulnerable. It was a side of her I hadn't seen in a long time, and it made my heart ache. "I don't want to fight anymore," I said softly, "but I need you to know that I can't keep being your emotional crutch when things go wrong. I love you, but I have to protect myself too. You're my sister, and I want to be there for you, but we need to find balance." She nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. "I get it now. I think I've been relying on you too much, and I need to learn to deal with my stuff on my own. I'm sorry." I reached out and hugged her tightly. "I'm not going anywhere, Emily. I just need us both to understand that relationships have to be built on respect. No more manipulation. No more trying to control each other." The weight that had been hanging over us for so long felt like it had lifted. It wasn't perfect, and I knew we still had some ground to cover, but it felt like we were finally heading in the right direction. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I made an effort to reconnect and rebuild our relationship. It wasn't an overnight fix, and there were still moments where old patterns crept in, but it felt like we were finally making progress. We spent more time together, talking about things that went beyond the surface level stuff. We talked about our past, our future, and the struggles we had both been through that we hadn't fully shared with each other. It wasn't easy, but every time we met or talked, I could feel the walls slowly crumbling. Emily started opening up about her frustrations with feeling left out, about how she had always been seeking validation, and how she didn't always know how to express that. I realized that much of her behavior had stemmed from her own insecurities, and while it wasn't an excuse for her actions, it was an explanation. As for me, I learned to be more assertive, something I had struggled with in the past. I started standing my ground when it came to my own needs and boundaries, and Emily began respecting that. We talked openly about expectations, both hers and mine, and we made a pact to communicate more effectively moving forward. But there was still the matter of the vacation. Emily had already booked it, but we both agreed that I couldn't just hand over money to fix the situation. I wasn't going to pay for her trip as a way of making up for missing her birthday. However, Emily did end up going on her trip, and while it wasn't ideal, I felt like we were finally in a place where we could handle it like adults. The trip turned out to be a turning point for both of us. While she was away, we both had time to reflect. It was during this period that I realized something important. We didn't need grand gestures to make things right. Our relationship had always been built on love, but it also needed honesty and respect. And for the first time in a long while, I truly felt like we were getting there. When Emily returned from her vacation, we met up, and I could tell that she had spent a lot of time thinking, too. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't demanding anything. She was just ready to move on. I thought a lot about everything, she admitted as we sat down at a cafe. I realize that you don't owe me anything, and I shouldn't expect you to fix things for me. I need to take responsibility for my own happiness, and that includes how I handle my relationships. It was the most mature and self-aware conversation we'd had in a long time. I could see that she had grown, and it made me feel like we were starting fresh. Not just as sisters, but as two adults who were finally learning to respect each other's boundaries. As time went on, the rift between Emily and me slowly healed. It wasn't perfect, and there were still some awkward moments when old habits tried to resurface. But we were both putting in the effort to make it work. I noticed Emily was starting to change her approach to our relationship. She wasn't making demands anymore, and she started reaching out to me just to check in, without asking for anything in return. We started to talk about things that weren't just about her needs or my mistakes. We talked about our lives, our personal struggles, and our dreams for the future. It felt like we were rebuilding the friendship we had lost in the chaos. I could see how much she was trying to be a better sister, and I was determined to do the same. One evening, after we'd gone out for dinner, Emily turned to me and said, "You know, I've been thinking a lot about how things went down. I feel terrible for how I acted. I was really selfish, and I didn't realize how much I was putting on you." I could tell she genuinely meant it, and hearing her say that took a huge weight off my chest. "I know you were hurt, Em. I'm not saying I was perfect either, but I just want us to be able to handle things differently from now on, without all the drama." She smiled, her eyes softening. "Yeah, I think we're finally on the same page. I really appreciate you not giving in, even when it was hard. It showed me that you respect yourself, too." That moment was one of the most meaningful conversations we had ever had. It wasn't about blaming each other or justifying our actions. It was about moving forward, about acknowledging our mistakes, and finding a way to respect each other's space. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I realized that this experience had taught me a lot about boundaries and self-respect. For too long, I had allowed Emily's demands to take precedence over my own peace. But in the end, standing my ground, not giving in to pressure, and holding on to my principles had strengthened our bond, even though it had been a tough lesson. And as for Emily, I could see that this experience had changed her as well. She had learned that relationships, even with family, required effort, mutual respect, and understanding. She had learned that she couldn't just expect others to sacrifice their peace for her. And most importantly, she had learned that love and respect go hand in hand. Looking back, I'm grateful that I stood my ground with Emily, even when it felt like the easy way out would have been to just pay for the vacation and move on. It was a tough road, but in the end, we both came out stronger and more aware of each other's boundaries. If you're in a situation where someone in your life is taking advantage of your kindness or pushing your boundaries, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Setting boundaries is essential to maintaining healthy relationships, and it's okay to say no when it's necessary. You deserve to have your needs respected, and sometimes that means making difficult decisions. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member or friend? How did it turn out? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this.